We spoke about wine in episode 210, and what better podcast to go with wine than cheese? Do you have a favourite cheese? You'll learn about some different types of cheeses and some cheese idioms in this episode of
Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig.
Hello and welcome. I'm Craig.
And I'm Reza.
And together with over 45 years of teaching English between us, Reza and I are going to help you improve your English and take your grammar, your vocabulary and all parts of your English to the next level. How are you, Reza?
I'm doing well, Craig. How are you?
I'm a bit hot and sweaty, but apart from that, I'm feeling good.
Just as ever. Just a normal day for Craig.
Just a normal sweaty day. I'm feeling sweaty like an old soft cheese. Before we begin speaking about cheese, we have some feedback and a 5-star review on iTunes from Gina Correa from Brazil. Reza, would you like to read what Gina left us on the iTunes store?
This is what Gina wrote. Even though it's an English podcast for Spanish people that want to learn English, I, as a Brazilian, am simply loving to take a ride with Spanish people. I have recently discovered these amazing podcasts, and they are literally just perfect. Because with their chat, they can transmit information about English that I have been searching for in traditional courses for years. And best of all, with a good and great spontaneous mood. Congratulations and thanks, both of you, Reza and Craig, for sharing your good didactic humour with us.
Well, thank you, Gina. That's a lovely review. Thank you very, very much.
Muito obrigado.
Obrigado. It's wonderful getting listeners from all over the world. And we always read and appreciate all the reviews that are left on iTunes. Thank you, Gina, again. If you would like to help us and you subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, that really helps us to go up the iTunes listing and more people listen and find our podcasts. So even if you're not listening on iTunes, please do us a huge favor and go there and just subscribe. Just click subscribe to our podcast, Aprender Inglés con Reza y Craig. And you can also find us now on Spotify and on the new Google Podcast app. Well, there are 2 ways that you can listen to us on an Android phone. With the app that you can find in the Google Play Store, it's called Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Download that app to your phone. Or you could just search in Google for Inglés Podcast and automatically you see the play button on your phone. So it's really, really easy now with a Google phone, with an Android phone, to listen to our podcast.
Well, Craig, shall we get down to today's business?
It's cheese time. Let's talk about cheese.
Bring out the cheese.
You know, Reza, I'm a bit cheesed off at the moment because it's so hot here in Valencia.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Craig's cheesed off. That means he's annoyed. Le toca las narices.
Yep.
He doesn't like it at all.
The heat is cheesing me off. Can you remember the last time you cheesed someone off, made them angry?
Oh, most days of my life, to be honest, I cheese someone off. I always say something that irritates people. I cheese them off. So that's a phrasal verb with the word cheese and the preposition off. Who would have thought? Another very common verb associated with cheese and other food is to nibble. Very often people like to nibble. That's N-I-B-B-L-E. They like to nibble a cheese. Or disquiar. Just eat picar. Eat a little bit. A little bit. Not too much.
And it's a verb and a noun. So you can nibble a piece of cheese. Or you could say, hey, do you fancy a nibble? Do you fancy a nibble of my cheese or a nibble of my biscuit?
Now, Craig, if I told you that I saw James Bond yesterday and he stopped because he wanted to shake my hand because he said he'd heard all about me on the podcast and it was a great honor. What would you say about my story?
I would say that your story is full of holes, like Swiss cheese. So if something is full of holes, it has a lot of holes in it, like Reza's story. Imagine you have a really old t-shirt and it's so old that there are holes appearing in the t-shirt. You can say, my t-shirt is so old, it's like Swiss cheese. It's full of holes. Reza, what do people say before you take their photo? Or what do you say to them so that they smile for you?
Well, if you're the photographer, you're the one who's going to take the picture, you say cheese, because you want the people in the photograph to make the sound cheese. Because if you exaggerate that word, if you say it for a long time, cheese, you notice that it forces you to open your mouth wide, the kind of shape you have to make when you smile. That's why we get people to say cheese in English.
What do people say in Spanish?
Patatas.
Patatas. Cheese.
You open your mouth to say patatas. Why? That's why.
The problem with patatas is that there's lots of P's in patatas and T's, so you're closing your mouth. If you don't, cheese has a really long vowel sound, but patatas, maybe you take the photo when the mouth is closed.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, you've got to catch them quick.
Or maybe it's patata.
Right, but you would have to catch them in Spanish between consonants.
Yeah.
If you catch somebody just as they're saying the t, then their mouth's going to be closed. It's got to be a pa and then the ta. If you get them with the t, then it's not going to work.
I think cheese is easier.
Do you know what Korean people say when they want to take a picture?
No.
Cheese. I'm not making it up.
Really?
Yeah. They say cheese, but Korean style. I've seen them do it. So they go, cheese. Seriously. It's weird, isn't it?
And they hold up two fingers near their face. Why do they do that? Why do they hold up two fingers? Have you seen that?
I don't know about that. Yeah.
Strange.
But they honestly say cheese.
So if you are from Korea and you're listening to this, or Japan or some other Asian countries, why do you hold up two fingers when you're having your photograph taken? Maybe it's a V for victory.
Now, Craig, cheese comes in many different shapes and sizes. There are big, small ones. But if I said a person was a big cheese, what am I talking about?
A big cheese, a big shot, S-H-O-T, is an important, powerful person, someone who demands a lot of respect, someone who's recognized for being a very important figure, very important person. For example, in our language school, Reza is a big cheese when it comes to teaching IELTS classes and higher levels. He's the big cheese.
Right,
He's the guy, the go-to guy for IELTS.
Oh, I think Craig's exaggerating a bit there. I think it's far more honest to say that Craig is a big cheese in the world of English podcasting.
Oh no, we're both little cheeses. If you say that something is like chalk and cheese, or people are like chalk and cheese, what does that mean?
Well, that means they're totally different. Because, as you know, cheese has a certain texture. It's made out of milk. So, yeah, some are harder than others, but it's not really hard. Whereas chalk, C-H-A-L-K, chalk, titha, is very hard. There's no such thing as soft chalk, is there? Hard chalk. It's the kind of thing that will snap. Snap is when you put pressure on something hard and it goes and it breaks. So very different textures. The texture of chalk and the texture of cheese are so completely different. So when you say like chalk and cheese, you're comparing two things which are totally different.
For example, my sister and I are very, very different. We're very different personalities. Totally different. So you could say that my sister and I are very different. We're like chalk and cheese, nothing like each other.
Now, Craig, the word cheesy with a Y at the end, as you can imagine, can mean that it's got cheese in it. For example, I like cheesy pizzas.
Me too.
Pizzas with lots of cheese. I like other cheesy dishes which have cheese in them. But there's another meaning of cheesy, isn't there?
Yes, it can mean kutre or kursi. For example, you buy a plastic, very, very unoriginal souvenir when you go on holiday and you take it back to your friend and you say, here, I've got you this souvenir. Well, your friend might think, well, that's really it's plastic, it's predictable, it's a bit cheesy, a bit predictable, a bit cutre. Have you got any cheesy souvenirs at home?
Yeah, I have a couple. I have a frog on a rocking chair with the professor's hat which says Salamanca on it. And I bought it for myself.
What's the connection of frogs and Salamanca?
Oh, very important, the frogs and Salamanca.
Yeah?
If anyone from Salamanca, any Salmantinos are listening, you know about the facade of the university. Whenever it was renovated, as a kind of a joke, the architect put a few things on it, including
is there a spaceman?
There's a spaceman, yeah. That's right. And there are frogs and other things in it. Yeah. So the frog is kind of like a joke thing from Salamanca, you know?
I think there might be a penis there as well.
There's a couple, actually. Yeah. There's a few. And yes, there's a spaceman, which obviously doesn't go back to medieval times, like the original facade. So they were having a bit of a laugh. So I'll repeat that, a frog with his tongue sticking out, by the way, and a professor's hat and a book in his hand on a rocking chair which says Salamanca on it. That's
Lovely.
Pretty cheesy.
That's pretty cheesy. Yeah, that's a cheesy souvenir. You can also have a cheesy grin. A grin is kind of a smile. How would you say grin in Spanish?
Sonrisa. Una sonrisa cutre. Una sonrisa. A very big, a very wide smile, exaggerated and probably insincere.
Maybe sarcastic. You can have a sarcastic grin.
You don't really think something's enjoyable or fun, but you're smiling anyway because you're making fun of someone or because you want to seem polite. You can smile with a cheesy grin. So it's not good to have a cheesy grin. It's not a good thing.
And you can also have cheesy music. If the music is a bit cutre, it's very kind of predictable, not very cool. You could say it's cheesy music. The kind of music you might hear in a lift, in an elevator, in a hotel, going up and down, and you hear this piped, cheesy music. Or if you're holding on the telephone waiting and they play this horrible cheesy music while you're waiting on the phone.
Imagine you were on your first date with someone, a romantic date. Yeah.
What music would you play on your first date?
I don't know. I don't know what I would play, but I tell you what I wouldn't play.
You wouldn't pick up your violin and start playing your violin.
No, you see, it would just be too cheesy.
Yeah.
If you wanted to be cheesy with music, on your very first date, you would maybe play Je t'aime. That would be the cheesiest thing ever. Yeah. Can you imagine? You just met someone like 5 minutes ago and you say, oh, I just want to dedicate this record to you. And you put on Je t'aime, je t'aime. Oh, that would be so cheesy.
Or Barry White.
Oh, what would you do? Oh, it'd be terrible. Apart from cheesy music, another very common collocation is a cheesy chat-up line.
What's a chat-up line?
Well, to chat someone up is to talk to someone because you're interested in them romantically. You have an amorous interest in them. You would like to have an intimate relationship with.
There's an attraction there.
So the line are the things you say. And very often people use cheesy chat-up lines. They say something like, hey, has anyone ever told you look like a model? Or, wow, you have the prettiest eyes I've ever seen. And this is someone like you've just met a minute ago. That's cheesy to say that sort of thing.
I've got a cheesy chat-up line. I said to a girl once, you must be tired. And she said, why? And I said, your legs have been running around my head all evening.
Oh, dear. That is so cheesy.
Is that cheesy?
Oh, dear me.
Too cheesy.
If Craig had been successful with that line...
I wasn't successful.
Yeah, I doubt it. But he could have added to his cheesy experience by perhaps taking that young lady to a cheesy motel room is another common expression. So cheesy is a very common expression to talk about hotels and motels, places.
What's the difference between a hotel and a motel?
A motel is very typical in the United States. It's a hotel beside a motorway, so therefore motel. So a lot of motels are cheesy because they're just for people who've been driving and they want to sleep and then continue driving. So they don't really care much about the quality of the place. So cheesy motel rooms are very common in the United States.
And some of them are very dirty and old and cutre, very sad and depressing. And if you find yourself in one of these horrible, cheesy, dirty motel rooms, somebody might say, well, tough cheese or hard cheese, which means bad luck. It's bad luck that you finished in this horrible hotel or motel. So tough cheese or hard cheese means bad luck.
So those are a few expressions and idioms and collocations. Let's actually talk about some particular types of cheese now. Craig, are you a fan of blue cheese?
I am. Blue cheese is usually fairly strong cheese, and it's the cheese that has blue lines through it. For example, Roquefort or Stilton cheeses are blue cheeses. Roquefort's French and Stilton's from the UK, and they're typically very strong cheese with a very strong flavour and a crumbly texture. So it falls apart and crumbles, dishace. Do you like blue cheeses?
I do. On the whole, yes.
How do you like to eat them? Do you like to eat them with anything in particular?
Red wine.
But with a cracker, bread, or by itself?
Maybe with a cracker, yes, perhaps with bread.
Cracker is galleta salada, I think.
Yeah. Or sometimes even a biscuit. Sometimes I take cheese with digestive biscuit.
Mm-hmm.
Would you ever have a digestive with cheese?
No, because that's sweet. I'm not a big fan of mixing sweet and savoury food very much.
So you're not going to be a fan of sweet cheeses then?
No, I don't think I've ever had sweet cheeses. And it's common, isn't it common to eat cheese with sweet fruit in syrup sometimes?
Yeah. And these days it's quite easy in the United Kingdom, but not in Spain. But in the United Kingdom, you can easily now find cheese with cranberries in it, cheese with other fruits actually in the cheese. And they're sweet. I don't like that myself.
I do like cheesecake. Especially chocolate cheesecake made with Philadelphia cream cheese. Philadelphia is a common make of cream cheese.
Another type of soft cheese like Philadelphia cream cheese is cottage cheese. Now, what's that, Craig?
In Spanish, requesón, cottage cheese. Do you like it?
No, not really. And you?
I don't mind it in the summer with a salad, but not by itself. I used to eat a lot of cottage cheese. I think it's quite healthy.
Now, if someone says to you they have fresh cheese, what would you understand?
Fresh cheese, it's white cheese. It doesn't have a strong flavour, and there's quite a high percentage of water in it. And it's where the milk curdles. To curdle is cuajarse. To curdle. And it's very popular in some countries in South Asia. You can have paneer. I'm sure you've heard of paneer because that's quite common in curries. That's a fresh cheese. And Asian curd cheese is very popular.
Of course, it's very popular in Spain as well. Queso fresco, you call it. And it tends to sit in its own liquid to keep it fresh, to keep it nice and humid.
It's very mild cheese. Yeah.
They say it's better for you than other cheeses. Apparently, it's a bit lower in fat.
And you can have cheese made from various different animals, of course. You can have goat cheese from goats. What other kind of cheeses are there? What other kind of animals produce cheese?
There's also sheep cheese and probably the most commonly eaten, cow cheese. Craig, of those three, do you have any preference?
Well, I know what cheese I like, and I think it's a sheep cheese. One of my favourites is manchego. There's a cheese, I'm not sure if it's manchego, but one of my favourite cheeses is idiazabal from the north of Spain. Is that manchego? Do you know?
No.
It's not? Okay.
It's from either the Basque country or Navarra.
I think it's from Navarra, yeah.
No, it's a sheep cheese, but it's not manchego. Manchego obviously has to be from La Mancha.
So then thinking about where idiazabal comes from, that the animal and manchego, then I'm definitely a big fan of sheep cheese. What about yourself?
Yes, and I'm a huge fan of manchego in particular, but idiazabal I like as well. Yeah, I like cured sheep cheese. So cured, curado.
Me too.
It's taken a while to
and
get
smoked.
Right.
Some of it's smoked. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I like that too.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like feta cheese?
I don't mind it. Same as cottage cheese with a salad in the summer. I'm not a huge fan, but if it's in a salad, yeah, I don't mind it.
It's a very particular thing, I think.
It's very salty, isn't it?
Very salty, yes. And it has a flavour which is almost, but not quite, rancid.
Yeah.
Rancid, R-A-N-C-I-D, is when milk or cheese is going off. You know, it's not quite fresh. But feta even when it is fresh, has a kind of rancid taste. That's part of its character.
It's a sour taste, isn't it?
Yeah, sour, agrio. It's agrio. I'm a big fan of feta, yeah. And I'm a huge fan of spanikopita, which is a classic Greek dish of feta cheese, spinach, all baked in a pie. Ooh,
I don't think I've had that.
Ooh, it's a classic Greek dish.
Have you ever cooked it yourself?
No, but I've had my auntie Audrey's, who lives in Athens. It's pretty good.
Yeah, you've got relatives in Athens.
Yeah,
maybe that's the connection for you with feta cheese.
Spanikopita is very good. And she wouldn't dare use imitation feta. These days they sell imitation cheeses a lot, and feta is one of those. You get packets of feta style cheese from Denmark, and the Greeks would say, "Oh, these are not feta. Oh, you insult my country. Can't eat it."
Yeah, but they probably say it in a Greek accent, though.
Yeah, not a Polish one for some reason.
One of the favorite. It's funny when you grow up and you have these tastes from your childhood. My mum always used to give me Gouda cheese or Edam cheese, and she used to call it Dutch cheese.
Yeah,
because I think it's from Holland.
Yeah.
And it was the go-to cheese for my mum when she made me a cheese and tomato sandwich, or maybe melted cheese on toast that I really liked as a kid. So that taste of that kind of cheese, even though it's not my favourite cheese, really reminds me of growing up in the UK. Did you have that when you were a kid?
Very often in our house we had Gouda, or some people call it Gouda. I'm not quite sure which is right, Gouda or Gouda. Mm-hmm. You're right. In the 70s and perhaps the 80s, it was one of the most popular, maybe the most popular cheese in the UK, but it isn't anymore. It has fallen out of favour. It's not so popular now.
I think my mum used to buy it because it was quite inexpensive. It wasn't an expensive cheese, whereas my dad liked Stilton and blue cheese, which was quite expensive.
Now, another cheese which is definitely expensive, if you get the genuine, the real one, is mozzarella.
Mozzarella.
Why is that expensive?
Well, I know it's from a buffalo. It's buffalo cheese, isn't it? So maybe the fresh buffalo cheese is just difficult to get.
Yeah.
I mean, have you ever milked a buffalo?
No, certainly haven't.
A brave man or woman would be milking a buffalo. I mean, they're big animals. So, I've milked cows before. But maybe that's why it's expensive. They need to pay them a lot of money, danger money, to get under the buffalo to take the milk.
Could be. Although it's easy to get cheap mozzarella, but I'm afraid to tell you it's not going to be genuine.
No.
These days, supermarkets are full of fake, F-A-K-E, false mozzarella, which just comes from, I don't know, sheep or goats, but it's not from...
And I guarantee you something, mozzarella cheese is very common on pizza, but you're not going to get the fresh original mozzarella cheese on a supermarket pizza. No way.
We mentioned manchego, which is a hard sheep cheese that's cured. If we go to the other end of the spectrum, we have Brie. What's Brie, Craig?
Brie's a very soft, creamy, the adjective creamy from cream, a very creamy French cheese, a full fat soft cheese from France, similar to Camembert that you may have heard of. And again, one of my favourites. It's not a strong cheese, but it's got a lovely creamy taste. I like Brie.
I like it with other things. I find it a bit boring on its own, but it combines very well with chutney, particularly Angeles chutney, and other things. Goes well on crackers and breads with sauces and dips and ham. But on its own, it bores me a bit, I have to say.
Yeah, but some of the best Brie and Camembert cheese I've had was in France, in Paris, with fresh baguette. And I'm sure Pilar, our French fan over there in France, has had this many times. There's nothing better than fresh bread straight out the oven with lovely fresh Brie.
Oh, you mentioned, though, in the same breath, Brie and Camembert. Hold your horses.
They're not the same, I know, but they're both soft, creamy cheeses.
But for me, they're very different. I'm a big fan of Camembert because Camembert is stinky. It smells bad. It's smelly. Stinky. S-T-I-N-K is the verb. So stinky.
Like your socks.
Like my socks, yeah. Mm-hmm. They smell bad, you go, ooh, that doesn't smell. And a lot of interesting and unusual cheese is stinky. The smell is not nice, but it tastes great. And if you've ever been to France near real good camembert, it really stinks.
So if you had to choose, you'd prefer camembert than Brie?
Oh, any day, yeah, any day. For me, as a general sign of what could be and probably will be a good cheese, if I've never had a cheese before, Pilar, you'll like this. I ask myself, does it smell like a sweaty Frenchman's foot? Yes, it'll be good then. If it smells like a sweaty French man or woman's foot, it's probably going to be good. It's a general rule of thumb. Come on, guía general.
So I have to ask.
And camembert does.
I have to ask, when was the last time you smelt
frequently?
I smelt a Frenchman's foot.
Frequently. Every week of my life, I smell the French people's feet.
Ah, bonjour, Jacques. You have come for I smell your foot.
I have come for the smelling of the feet.
Parmesan cheese. Let's move to Italy. Parmesan cheese on pasta is also a lovely taste. Parmesan, obviously a hard cheese. Very strong, quite a strong flavor, but good Parmesan cheese, when you grate it, how do you say grate in Spanish?
Rayar.
Grated on tomato sauce or some pasta or on top of a good lasagna. Wow, that's really good.
Yes, and I particularly like Parmesan when it's melted. Melted cheese is when the cheese has been heated, so it becomes liquid. Many cheeses are good for that, but Parmesan takes on a very special flavor when it's melted. You know, like cheese on toast, a toasted cheese sandwich. If you mix cheeses, that makes it a lot more interesting. You know, if you put like a little bit of cheddar, a little bit of blue cheese, and a bit of Parmesan, oh, now you're talking.
So if you wanted cheese on toast or a toasted cheese sandwich, do you have a go-to cheese that you would put inside the toasted sandwich? A go-to cheese is a cheese that you would choose, a cheese that you would go to automatically as your favorite. Do you have one?
I don't. I know for many people it would be cheddar cheese. That's traditional English cheese. But for me, I like experimenting. So sometimes I make a toasted cheese sandwich with Gruyere, sometimes with whatever I've got to hand, just as an experiment. What about you?
Well, if I'm making a toasted cheese sandwich, then I'd go back to my childhood and choose Gouda or some kind of sort of semi-hard cheese. Whatever's in the fridge, really. Any melted cheese, in my opinion, tastes good. But yeah, there are some cheeses that melt better than others. Cheddar is always a good choice for melting cheese.
We were talking earlier, though, about fake cheese, like fake mozzarella is very common, but probably not half as common as fake cheddar. I would say there's hardly any real cheddar around. It is an actual regional cheese in England. There's a place called Cheddar Gorge, which is where cheddar cheese is supposed to come from.
But I don't think they have the copyright on it as place of origin.
That's it.
So whereas
they didn't get it passed by the European Union, it wasn't approved, so anyone can call cheese cheddar.
Yeah,
you know. But there is the original cheese from cheddar, which people say is really, really good, really interesting. But you tend to get bland, that's so bland copies everywhere of cheddar cheese.
Tasteless. Yeah. There are, of course, many, many, many different types of cheeses in the world. And of course, we're not going to list them all here. Otherwise, we'd be podcasting for hours. But if you want to laugh a little, I am going to include a sketch by Monty Python called The Cheese Shop Sketch. So go to the website. You can see that. It's a YouTube link and you can find it at inglespodcast.com/222.
So we'd love to hear from you. You might want to get in touch with us. For example, you could tell us, what are your favorite cheeses? Craig's told you about his childhood fondness for Gouda. He's told you that he likes blue cheeses these days. We'd like to hear from you. How do you prefer to eat your cheese? Do you like it grilled, melted? Do you like it with wine? Do you like it on bread? Or perhaps more interestingly, when do you like it? Do you like it after dinner with crackers? Do you like it during your dinner, during the meal? Do you like it before? In Spain, it's very common to eat cheese before the main meal, whereas in Britain and France, it's very common after the main meal.
And I don't know what it's like here, but in the UK, when I was growing up, it was common to eat cheese with celery, apio. In fact, the first time I ever tasted cheese that wasn't Edam or Gouda cheese was when my dad gave me some blue cheese, some Stilton, on a stick of celery, and I hated it. He said you've got to keep the taste together in your mouth. You mustn't separate the celery from the cheese. And it was a horrible experience for me. That's another way you could eat cheese, with celery. So what do you think? And what do you think of cheese in the USA? Because it doesn't have a great reputation, does it? American cheese, they call it American cheese, the typical cheese you find in a hamburger or some kind of toasted sandwich in the US. Although I do hear that they're making very good artisan cheeses sold in farmers markets and local in the countryside in the US. If you go to a small town, you are going to find really good cheese. But the typical American cheese in supermarkets, are you a fan of that?
No.
Me neither.
I never ever buy it. For me, when I think American cheese, I think of a processed, pre-sliced Kraft cheese. And it does nothing for me.
Me too. So have you tasted any good American cheese? If you have, we'd love to hear about it. Do you have a cheesy souvenir that you can send us a picture of? Anything about cheese, we'd love to get your feedback on this episode. Send your emails to reza@belfastreza@gmail.com.
Or to Craig. He's at craig@inglespodcast.com.
And of course, we do prefer hearing your voice and listening to your voice messages. So if you would like to record yourself and practice your speaking, you can do that on speakpipe.com/inglespodcast, or just record your voice as an MP3 and attach it to an email. Before we go, we'd love to thank our wonderful sponsors, starting with Bruno, our gold sponsor on Patreon, who offers walking tours of Copenhagen through his company, CopenhagenWalkingTour.com. Now, if you're going to Copenhagen and you're interested in seeing the city and having an experienced English-speaking or Spanish-speaking guide, then why not get in touch with Bruno, who offers castle tours of the city, walking tours around Copenhagen, and these tours come very well recommended. Also, if you're going to Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, Bruno offers tours led by local guides only of the favela area in Rio. Now, it's very safe, and the money that you contribute to the tour partly goes to help the community and give back to them to improve their daily needs. Go to Bruno's websites to find out more information, CopenhagenWalkingTour.com for Copenhagen and favelawalkingtour.com.br for Rio de Janeiro. Thank you to all our wonderful patrons who are supporting the podcast. Reza, who are they?
Ana Giovanna, Dana Constantin, Pachi Bañez, Manuel Tarazona, Juan Carlos Rodado, Maite Palacín Pérez, Lara Arlem, Néstor from Luces Extrañas, María Gervati, Lorena, Sara Jarabo, Carlos Garrido, Mamen, Juan Leva Galera, Corey Finneran from the ivenvy.com podcast, Miren Full, José Luis Arregui, Agus Paulucci, Mariel Riedemann, Manuel García Betagón, Raúl López, Rafael, José Manuel Fernández Picazo, Pilar Martínez, Gambati Blog, Igor Garmendia, Ignacio Espona, Kieran, Ana Ibarra, Marina Artiz Pena, Juan Carlos Pantín Fernández, Alejandro Pluma, Alex Cuadra, José Emilio Villena, Esperanza Colmenero, Emilio Manuel Martínez Rivas, Chema Santa Cruz, Ana Fernández Monterrubio, Carlos Cano Domingo, Gustavo, Antonio Díaz, José Antonio Muñoz, Eva María Elizalde Martínez, Arminda Fafo, Carlos Sánchez, Elvira Cortés, Francisco Javier Alejandra y Sebastián, Andrea Mío, Rogelio Menéndez, Antonio Lafuente, Eloy, Pablo Martínez, Miguel, Javier Correa Zambade, Alejandro Martínez, and Alejandro Ventura. And our latest patrons are Isabel Armada and Mar Carmona.
Thank you to all of those wonderful people for continuing to support the podcast and transcriptions for our podcast. You can join our Patreon program for as little as $1 per month, and by doing so, you get instant access to recent transcriptions lovingly transcribed by Angelica Bello from Madrid. If you would like to join that lovely list, go to patreon.com/Inglespodcast. Thank you also to Patricia Alonso, who continues working hard transcribing episodes for you. And we now have episodes 1 to 22 and 131 to 142. Of course, not only Patricia, but there have been others who have helped us in the past, like Arminda from Madrid. Thank you very much. Alberto from Granada. Thank you. We really appreciate your time. Reza, what's on next week's episode?
On next week's episode, wishes, desires, and regrets.
Okay, I hope you haven't regretted listening to this week's podcast. Thank you for doing that. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
And bye-bye from me.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later. If James Bond ate cheese, what cheese do you think he'd eat?
He'd like classy cheese. He'd definitely be a Manchego man. Manchego he'd have.
You think he'd have a Spanish cheese?
He'd go for Manchego. In the right mood and setting, he'd have the odd Roquefort. Depends.
Roquefort and crackers.
But being a British agent, I'm sure Christmas he'd have Stilton and port. How can you govern a country with 246 types of cheese?